we started with this formal interview, you said something very, very important, which I'm sure everyone listening here in our country, watching us, would agree that when it comes to talking about EV, anything to do with EV, the first port of call which we think about is China. And you want to change that. And with that, you've started a very, very important startup, which is called, and it has a very beautiful and important name to Matter. Tell us, what are you doing in the EV space? And the other thing I was told that, after Prime Minister talked about innovating for the country, you were even more enthused to do this. So tell us what you're doing with Matter and why should it matter to India?
Great. Thank you for the introduction. And Matter is a startup in the energy tech space. We don't really limit ourselves to EV tech. We are also working on all elements of technology which associate to new and renewable energies. Realizing that Chinese imports really don't work in India in the EV space. They are the ones that catch the news. They are the ones that catch fire. So from there, I think mid 2018 is where I was introduced to one of my co-founders, Arun. And that's where the core conversation happened on how do we actually accelerate the adoption of EVs in India. And it came down to ideas like safety, security, reliability, and performance. These are the four things EVs fundamentally lacked in. And his learnings pointed in one direction that you have to own the technology piece. You can't really leave it to people outside the country who don't understand our use cases and the likes. My go-to approach is generally build the technology out, and that's where the actual convergence happened. And then in January we started Matter. Our starting point has always been electric vehicles. And on an electric vehicle, everything that differentiates an EV from an internal combustion vehicle, those core technologies are the technologies that we work on. So we design and build our own motors. We design and build our own transmission systems. We design and build battery packs, battery management systems. Every key building block, which in turn associates its attributes to safety, security, reliability, and performance, those things are controlled in-house. And the core reason for doing that is through our research, we've realized that in India today, there's a supply constraint of electric vehicles. There aren't enough product offerings which cater to the needs of the people. That being said, it's not that there aren't any, but there is a vacuum there which needs to be filled. And the idea for Matter to get into this is our overall mission is to accelerate India to energy independence. And the first starting point for us is getting into electric vehicles, which drive adoption of electric vehicles. And with that idea, we started Matter and we started building out these technologies.
From what I've read, you started in 2019, and in just a very short span of time, you have more than 100 IPs. Can you tell us about this and how did you manage to do that so quickly?
In 2019, the journey started with trying to understand what's available, which is, falling into the criterias of an Indian product, because our usage patterns, weather patterns, our use cases are very different as compared to the rest of the world. And from there, we kind of dwelled deeper into the requirements and started realizing that some of these technologies are not available in a time span or at a cost point which makes sense to the Indian consumer or a product that needs to work in India. So that was our driving point to making these technologies, and along the way, innovation to solve some of the basic conversational topics like thermal management. We really had to innovate on there because from Ahmedabad, where we are, summers are 47 degrees ambient, and two-wheeler is going to sit out in the sun for parking in the heat in the afternoon. And you're reaching the tipping points of technology once this happens.
Yeah.
So the idea was that how do we solve this problem? That led to an innovation. And things like these across all the core technology elements led us to today, where we are a team of 170, 75. And that is where this 100 plus IP pipeline is created. Idea again behind this technology piece being that most people always say that India is incapable of building out good technology. We always look to international partners to give us a piece of the technology. And I have a very strong belief in the India story. This entire idea that made in India for India, and the world came in, and that's the core behind our patent pipelines.
Wow, wow. And I have to call this out that you're based out of Ahmedabad and your team is out of Ahmedabad, and your engineering team also out of Ahmedabad. And I'm calling this out because, when it comes to startups and doing cutting edge stuff, Bangalore is, where people shift. But you're creating a whole ecosystem over there in Ahmedabad. Tell me, what are some of the strengths? What are some of the challenges of building a startup in EVs and in this space out of Ahmedabad?
To talk about the strengths that Gujarat has to offer is from a supplier ecosystem. We are quite in between on the country, between the north and the south. Gujarat itself has its own core competency because of, I would say the Sanand GIDC, where Tata and previously Ford were located. A supplier ecosystem is already created. The Gujarat government for the past 10 years has always been promoting electronics and power electronics industry. So there's a strong base there, which is also aiding us. So in that sense, Gujarat from a hardware perspective is, the go-to place. We really don't have to travel quite far away to kind of get suppliers and, the core manufacturing facilities. From a challenges perspective, yes, getting people to come down to Ahmedabad does become a challenge. And, it's that once people, see what Ahmedabad has to offer, suddenly, they convert. So it's always getting the first foot in, which is the challenge. And yeah, that's kind of about Ahmedabad and the challenges and the pros and the cons.
I studied in Ahmedabad, so I'm a huge fan of the city, and then it's commendable that you're building, because the kind of startup that you are building, that will also create an ecosystem sort of, it will grow the ecosystem. Of course, ecosystem is there, it will grow the ecosystem. So kudos to you on that. I also wanted to ask in terms of, building the core engineering capability. How are you looking at that? How are you building? Because tech talent is massively in demand today in India. How are you looking at that specifically?
So for us, fundamentally, when we go out and build a team, the core things that we look for are, first is from an attitude perspective, we need go-getters.
Yeah.
Go-getters are the way of breaking things and creating faster products and solutions, because there are glass ceilings in technology which with the right approach are broken. Well, there are also limitations of physics, so which kind of kick in, but the idea is that innovation at its core, you want the technology team to also be an entrepreneur in its own right. You want them to start thinking on, okay, nothing's impossible, how do we get it done? And apart from that, we kind of look at people who have an innate ability to, value maximizing. It is more about finding the right balance in terms of approach. So I'll kind of quickly share about one of our co-founders, Mr. Sharan Babu. By education, he's a trained architect, but by his experience, he understands technology, he understands design, he understands consumer experience. And for us, it is not qualifications that limit what a person can do. I mean, it's not your degree which is the final thing, it's your ability to learn more things. And with that outlook, we were able to kind of get the best talent in the country, ranging from PhDs to fresh graduates, everyone coming in from all parts of the country. So if I have to say, I think we have covered 25 states in terms of our team, in terms of where they originate from. So it's really a national team that we have batting for us.
Wow. Have you raised external capital, or are you looking at raising external capital?
So till date, 7.5 million has been invested in Matter. And yes, we will be looking to raise external capital as we reach the right stages and the milestones from our perspective. So that's where I'll leave the funding bit.
Okay, we'll keep a track on what's coming next. Mohal, you have a very powerful vision. You want to accelerate India's energy, accelerate India's energy independence. And that's not a small statement, that's that's a big statement. I want to ask you that 2 years, 1 year, 2 years down the line, what and where we will see Matter, what we will see from Matter and where we will see Matter.
So I'll start with what will we see from Matter. So we would have seen a few two-wheeler products from Matter coming out. We would have seen Matter also playing a significant part in the grid stabilization aspect, because the core technology that goes onto an automotive battery pack is the same one that is used for energy storage systems. And that is where we've kind of made a small internal branded outfit called Matter Energy. And that is the piece that is going to work focused on providing new age battery solutions to everyone outside of Matter. And that is where we see ourselves playing a part in the overall grid level ecosystem, to home inverters, to other battery packs. And from an automotive side, we will be out with a host of two-wheelers in the next few years.
Now we looking forward, and I can just say that the EV market seems to be heating up, because we have here in Bangalore itself, we've seen some launches in the recent months. So yeah, looking forward to it. Now tell me about your background. You have a degree in material science. What drove you to get into this space, and tell me, what are some of the learnings that you are bringing from your past into what you're building right now?
So in terms of what drove me into this space is, I mean, being a materials guy, following Elon Musk for the past 10 years, there's a statement of his which was quite powerful, I think back in 2011 or 12, when he said that lithium-ion prices are going to drop to below $100. I mean, at that point, I don't think the world really considered that seriously. But come 2018, when prices were just around $200, is when everything started to make sense. I mean, my family has always taught me that there are certain values that you always look at, and frugality and creating an impact. So these two things, with a reasonable bookish understanding of cells and lithium-ion technology, trying to figure out what the TCO maths is going to be for a consumer, and suddenly everything started falling into place. This is where some exposure of mine onto a hardware startup that I had, kind of worked with them in the past, Ethereal Machines. They actually won the Best of Innovation at CES in 2018. doing those things, kind of enabled this larger, grander vision to say that, yes, it is possible, it is within reach. From a learnings perspective, I think this has been more of a crash course into automotive and what can truly change. Products, fair understanding, but when it comes to automotive, this was a crash course. And there's a lot of improvements that can be done from a thought perspective in the automotive space. And that's what we've enabled at Matter. We believe in testing, 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 and testing. We really, our CTO, Mr. Prasad, his flat out statement always has been, show me the data. And that always works in terms of enabling confidence.
Yeah.
And most times that is a part that is most overlooked. People make a prototype and then they suddenly take that into production. And that's where, in hindsight, that's where most of the mistakes happen.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the major learning for me in this journey till date.
Yeah. Mohal, now I want to ask you, India as a country, where do you think we are when it comes to, creating, enabling ecosystem for EV and related sector? Also, what are some of the things that you think we need to do?
So this is quite a broad question. So I'm going to start with the recent PLI schemes by the government, which have truly enabled cell manufacturing coming in. EV components are being promoted. Semiconductors are being promoted. And, there are three things that we have to import today for the lack of an ecosystem in India are the lithium ion cells, the semiconductors, and rare earth magnets. This is the part which is going to hurt us the most, and taking cognizance of that, the government's already started acting on it. So that's a very positive sign. This is a place where there's been tremendous interest as well. So I strongly believe that in the next few years, these concerns would have been taken care of. Overall, from an ecosystem, I think otherwise we have people who are able to deliver everything that we need. It's just that sometimes we kind of mix or miss the solution. So motor technologies are fancy at a design level, but from a manufacturing level, somebody who can make a ceiling fan, if somebody knows what that process is and a designer is able to take that into consideration and design a motor which can work with a ceiling fan manufacturer, you suddenly unlocked a massive ecosystem.
Yeah.
There are too many people in India who can do that for you. It is always working with your partners and suppliers in figuring out what works best for the solution. I wouldn't call this a EV only ecosystem. I wouldn't call this an automotive ecosystem, because there are bits and pieces of this puzzle which are all around India. Yeah. It's about just looking at them with a fresh set of eyes and bringing them into the fold.
Do you at some point also see yourself creating a forum or an entity which brings people together in this space?
So from a supplier ecosystem, I think there is already work that is happening at different levels. There are national level forums who are already doing this. There already exist component supplier forums which are there. So there is today we don't really see adding too much value other than participating in those and pushing out newer ideas on what else could be done to solve India specific concerns. But otherwise these systems exist, and why try to fix something which is not broken?
Yeah, okay, I hear you. To everyone listening to you today, I also want to ask you about the name Matter. And how did you get this name Matter? And because, it's such a powerful, unique, and what should I say, omnipresent in everyone's mind word. How did you get this?
So, well, when the first time the word matter was proposed, it was me and my co-founder Sharan, and both of us had very different take on the same word. For me, being from a materials background, it came from the smallest building block from which we are going to start building this out. And that is where matter came in. And for Sharan, the angle that he looked at the word matter is that from an experience point, from a consumer ownership point, from the environment standpoint, yes, everything matters. And suddenly that kind of struck a chord with us, and we've stuck with it ever since.
Wow. No, it's very powerful. It definitely stands out. Mohal, before I let you go, what I would like, if you could share through your lens, through your experience, what would you like to tell all the other entrepreneurs, builders who are building something in this space?
So the first thing that I would like to say is that test, test, and test. Not that that is the end of the road. That is never the end. Consumers are always, consumer is king, and they will always have something which we have not thought of at a design stage. Some failures will happen, and that is a part and parcel of a journey of getting to the final product. And the idea is always about value for money.
Yeah.
There is no point in creating engineers monuments which don't actually have a consumer base. I mean, at concept level, it's great, it works fine, but to really get India to the point where we want to be in the next 10 years, we really need to understand the consumer and provide solutions. I mean,
Yeah.
Taj Mahal can't be everyone's house.
Yeah.
And that's the thought there.
I'm sorry I said last question, but I have one more question now that you brought in Taj Mahal. Design is a very crucial element when one is launching vehicles and in the automotive space. How do you look at design, and what are some of the things that you are doing to build and bring cutting edge design?
So design on a two-wheeler with limited real estate, if I have to, is always a challenge. And differentiating on that design is again always a tricky affair. But fundamentally, it goes down to a company's core belief on what we stand for, what we understand for the consumer, and what we would like to offer them. So design can't be just something that is aesthetic. It has to be a mix of technology, functionality, and delivering something to the user.
Yeah.
Because as far as two-wheelers are concerned, you're sitting on the vehicle and not in the vehicle.
Yeah.
So there's a certain stark difference that comes out from functionality in that regard.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Mohal. We wish you all the very best and hope you get to matter in millions of people's life, and matter goes on to create and live the vision that you have, that we are an energy independent country. All the very best.
Thank you so much. Thank you.